Welcome everyone to the Pearson Edexcel training on conducting the speaking exam for the GCSE French 2024 specification. My name is Fiona Price. I was a languages teacher for over 20 years, including head of department roles. I have worked at Pearson Edexcel for 3 years working on the new GCSE specifications. My current role is Senior Qualification Manager for Languages, and I do lots of work with teachers in schools on training for the new specification and our other language qualifications. There will be a lot of information in this session, but I will make it as clear as possible. If you have questions, it is likely they will be answered by the end of the training. If you find you do still have questions at the end, you can email teachinglanguages@pearson.com. All the details will come in the support slides at the end. Or there is the option to attend one of our live training events throughout the year. You can check the dates for these on our Pearson Professional Development Academy website. There are a couple of mini quizzes during the training to check your comprehension of each of the exam elements. You can make a note of your answers so that you can check them when I go through them. So let's get started. Firstly, our aims and objectives. By the end of this session, you will have reviewed the speaking requirements in the new GCSE French specification. You will have looked at how to conduct each individual task. You will have explored the teacher-examiner role, that is your role, and will hopefully understand the musts and must-nots. And there is signposting at the end of the session to the full range of support we have available. Here is the agenda. As you can see, we look at the operational side of things with regard to the format of the paper and the timings, the candidate preparation time and preparation notes, and the role of the teacher examiner. Then we look at each individual element of the exam, the read aloud, role play, and picture task. It is important to note that the picture task has 3 separate elements to it: the picture description, the 2 follow-on questions, and then the broader conversation, so it is the biggest section to cover. There will also be useful links for you on administration and support. Let's look at the format of the whole speaking exam and the timings. This is just to show you the overview, and I will go into much more detail about each task as we move through the session, but this is a handy slide for reference. The exam starts with the preparation time, which you can see is the same for both foundation and higher. It is 14 minutes of supervised preparation, followed by an extra 1 minute of preparation in the exam room. I will go into more detail about this later on. The speaking exam then has 3 tasks which must be done in that order. Task 1 is the read aloud, Task 2 the role play, and Task 3 is the picture task. The read aloud is followed by 2 straightforward questions. The role play follows a similar structure to the previous specification, and the picture task now includes 2 follow-on questions and then leads into the general conversation. So you can see there are 3 elements to the picture task, and that this whole task is situated in the thematic context that is chosen by the student, although the teacher examiner has freedom to develop a natural conversation across contexts. There will be more about this later. The theme is chosen and prepared by the student in advance of the exam. This will be during a 2 working week period using our new sequencing tool. And you should check the published speaking window dates on our website to find out this information to make it work for your centre dates. There will be more on the sequencing tool later. Each task is worth 12, 10 and 28 marks at both foundation and higher, giving a total of 50 marks for the speaking exam. The timings for each individual element are slightly different at foundation and higher. So, with conversation as an example, it's 3 to 3.5 minutes for foundation and 5 to 5.5 minutes for higher. But these are recommendations only. The time that is important to you as teacher examiners is the total exam time in bold. exam markers will not mark after the maximum time of 9 or 12 minutes. There is no penalising for being under 7 or 10 minutes, only in that the candidates potentially won't have developed responses well enough to maximise marks. Now looking at the content of the exam, here on the left-hand side, you can see the 6 thematic contexts in the Pearson Edexcel GCSE. The read aloud and picture task will be based on 2 different thematic contexts. So a student might have a read aloud on my personal world and the picture task on my neighbourhood. They will never be on the same thematic context. The thematic context for the picture task will be known by candidates in advance, as there is a pre-selection element, which we will go through in more detail when we get to the picture task part of the training. The read aloud will be randomly allocated to candidates based on their chosen thematic context for the picture task, to ensure the thematic contexts are different. The role play is not based on a thematic context. Instead, it is based on one of 10 transactional settings, which you can see on the right-hand side. The choice of role play will also be randomly allocated using the sequencing tool. We will talk more about the sequencing tool a bit later. Now let's look at the preparation time. Just a reminder that preparation time should be supervised by someone other than a language specialist, and that all posters or information on display that could help candidates must be removed or covered. The total preparation time is 15 minutes, and it must be immediately before the candidate's scheduled examination time. The first 14 minutes of supervised preparation must be done in silence to ensure parity between all centres and all boards. This must be enforced even if candidates are supervised individually. During this time, candidates should prepare all 3 tasks. They must not write on the stimulus cards except for the read aloud card. More on this later. And they must not speak out loud or have access to dictionaries or other resources. All candidates then get an additional 1 minute of preparation time in the examination room. This must be given to all candidates, again for parity reasons. Our recommendation is that candidates use this time to practice the read aloud out loud, but if they prefer to continue to prepare in silence, that is fine. They can also continue annotating the card in this time if they wish. The important thing is that the 1 minute is for all students, even if they don't want to practice out loud. This is recorded as part of the exam, which I'll get onto later. During the preparation time, candidates can make notes relating to all 3 tasks. They are allowed to annotate the read aloud card if they wish, to assist with their pronunciation, but they must make all other notes on a single sheet of A4 paper, which can be double-sided, and has their name, candidate number, and centre number on it. They are allowed to refer to these notes during the whole assessment. You will be provided with enough read aloud cards to ensure all candidates can annotate the read aloud cards. But for the role play and picture task and conversation, you will only be sent a standard pack, so there will not be enough for students to write on. Notes can be securely destroyed after October in the year of assessment, until which point they must be kept secure. In terms of what kind of notes the candidate should make, obviously they should be checking they know how to read the read aloud text, they should be preparing their role play responses, and they should be making detailed notes about the picture they choose to describe. More about this later as we unpack each task. Conducting the exam. It is worth remembering that the exam effectively starts when the student is comfortably seated and ready to start the exam, before the 1 minute preparation time. You must start the recording before the 1 minute additional preparation time starts so that it is captured. You should press record before the 1 minute time. The detail of timings and what the teacher needs to do is in our published teacher crib sheet. Because of this, you will need a stopwatch to monitor the total exam time, rather than relying on the timing on the recording device. You will state the candidate name and number at the start of each recording, and you will indicate to the candidate when the 1 minute of additional time starts. You must not offer any guidance to candidates during this 1 minute of prep time. After the end of the 1 minute additional time, you will announce, "The test will now begin. Please read the text." The candidate will then start the read aloud. It is your responsibility as teacher examiners to cover all parts of each task in the correct order and to ensure candidates have the opportunity to maximise marks. At the end of each task, candidates must hand back the relevant stimulus card to the teacher examiner. They hand in their written notes at the end of the exam. So, to summarise your part, the candidate enters the room and sits down. You press record on your device and introduce the candidate name and number. You announce the start of the 1 minute preparation time. You announce that the test will now begin at the end of the 1 minute preparation time, and you ask the candidate to read the text. This is the start of the official exam timing of 7 to 9 or 10 to 12 minutes, depending if it's foundation or higher tier. You conduct the test in this order. Firstly, the read aloud, secondly, the role play, and the final third task is the picture task. You take the stimulus material from the candidate at the points indicated in the published teacher crib sheet. At the end of the whole exam, you take their handwritten notes on A4 paper and keep them securely with your other exam materials, which your exams officer should be responsible for. You must use the sequencing tool for the allocation of cards. During the exam, it is your responsibility to keep an eye on the time to ensure the candidate has enough time to complete all tasks, essentially giving the candidate the best opportunity to show what they can do. This is a bit of information about the new sequencing tool. This tool is at an advanced development stage, but more training will be provided in the future, well in advance of live exams. Essentially, the sequencing tool replaces the old method of using the sequencing grids in the teacher booklet, which you used to use to prepare once you access your secure materials. It allocates the cards for each student for all 3 tasks. This process starts 2 working weeks prior to the start of the speaking assessment window, as published online by Pearson for the specific year of entry. It starts by randomly allocating 2 thematic contexts to every candidate. The list of candidates and thematic contexts can be downloaded so that teachers can circulate this information if needed in class. Candidates then select which of those they would like for the picture task and conversation element. Once decided, teachers enter the selection into the tool. Once the speaking examination window opens for teachers to prepare their materials for the exam, the tool will automatically generate a read aloud and role play card for candidates to ensure there is no overlap of thematic contexts. The images on this slide are an example of what the sequencing tool may look like and the steps you will take in selecting your candidate's thematic context in Task 3. The sequencing tool will be accessed through the Pearson portal, and like the data you find in other parts of the Pearson portal, like Edexcel Online and Results Plus, it will only show your centre information. Once accessed, you will see a series of drop-down selection boxes to indicate the qualification, series and subject that you've entered candidates for. When you enter the information, you'll be taken through to screen 2, where you'll see all of the candidates you've entered for that subject. You'll be able to see their learner ID, their candidate number, their name, tier of entry and the 3 tasks laid out in columns. Your candidate information will come from your entry data, so the screen would be empty prior to the end of the entry deadline. To view the Task 3 themes assigned to your candidates, Select the learners you wish to view and assign thematic context to, and click Allocate. This will take you through to a page showing the 2 randomly assigned thematic contexts for each candidate. Indicate each candidate's choice and click Save. After choosing the thematic context for your candidates, and once the window for assigning your candidates Task 3 choices has closed, the system will then randomly assign Tasks 1 and 2. The 3 allocated cards will only be visible on the tool 3 days before the speaking window opens. Each random assignment will be done at a candidate level, with possible sequences shared out across the entire cohort. As I mentioned, there will be full training coming on this later in the year, so please don't worry about it yet. We just wanted to give you a brief glimpse into what it will look like. Let's move on to talk about the read aloud in more detail. As you know, this is a totally new element of the GCSE for this specification. The read aloud assesses communication through the accurate application of SSCs, sound symbol correspondences, or phonics. For your information, there are 55 French SSCs listed in the specification. The focus of the read aloud is clear and comprehensible pronunciation, not how good their accents are. It is marked holistically, meaning that all words count towards the outcome. So imagine a student reading a message to a French native speaker. How much of the message as a whole does that native speaker understand? Pearson will set 6 different read aloud cards for each tier, 1 per thematic context. It will be randomly allocated using the sequencing tool. It will be on a different thematic context than the picture task. All rubrics will be in English, which is the case throughout this new GCSE. The teacher cards will have full instructions and will also have the 2 unseen compulsory follow-on questions about the read aloud passages. This is the only task that students can annotate on the cards. This is so that they can make annotations which might help with pronunciation. Pearson will send a sufficient number of read aloud cards for candidates to do this. This is not the case for the other 2 elements of the exam with cards. Here is an example of a foundation tier candidate card for the read aloud. It starts with a clear introduction in English. Sarah, your friend. The text that they have to read aloud is double line spaced so that they can annotate. There is a set of English instructions at the bottom. It instructs candidates to hand the card back after the read aloud. It informs them that they will be asked 2 follow-on questions related to what they have read. It informs them that 1-word answers will not be sufficient to gain full marks for the unseen question responses. It is worth noting that all unseen compulsory questions are marked this way in the speaking exam. Responses have to be at least 2 words long in order to access full marks. They don't necessarily have to contain a verb, but there needs to be at least 2 words. If the response only contains 1 word, it can only achieve 1 mark. But obviously, just because a candidate does say more than 2 words, it doesn't automatically give them 2 marks, only if they have answered the question, communicated fully, and there is no ambiguity. The follow-on questions will not be closed questions, which should hopefully avoid students being tempted to only say 1 word. We can see this on the next slide. So, as just mentioned, once the student has read the text, there are 2 unseen compulsory questions. They are not comprehension questions about the passage they have read, but they are related to the content. At both tiers, each question is presented in the present tense or the simple conditional form. The simple conditional is to deal with differences in likely experiences in topics like holidays, to ensure that students who do not have an experience to draw on directly can equally respond. They are open questions. The first question elicits likes, the second elicits an opinion. At foundation tier, the first question will be a question using Qu'est-ce que tu aimes? Plus an infinitive verb. The second question will be a Qu'est-ce que tu penses de? Question. At higher tier, the first question will be a like question using a variety of different structures. For example, qu'est-ce que tu aimes faire pour ton anniversaire? Où voudrais-tu habiter? The second question at higher tier will use a consistent structure. Quel est ton avis sur? These questions will only appear on the teacher examiner card as they are unseen by the candidate. The questions will relate to the content of the passage, so there may be a question that is not from within the thematic context on the read aloud card. For example, if the thematic context for the read aloud was my personal world, and the content of the passage included the sentence Je joue au football avec mes amis, a suitable follow-on question could be Quel sport aimes-tu pratiquer? Which technically comes under lifestyle and well-being. However, this question is related to the content of the passage they read. Just to emphasize again, to achieve a full 2 marks for each response to an unseen question, candidates must give a short answer of at least 2 words that communicates fully. Just to go over the point again about the follow-on question assessment criteria. The follow-on questions are only marked for communication. There is no expectation to develop their responses here. The marking grid is 2 marks for fully communicated response, i.e. one with at least 2 words, 1 for an ambiguous response, and 0 for an unanswered response. This is the same marking grid for all of the compulsory unseen questions. The final 2 bullet points on this slide are really important to note. If you amend or rephrase the compulsory questions or prompts, what the candidate says in response does not get any credit. That is the same for the previous specification when compulsory questions or prompts are rephrased or changed by teachers. Also, if a candidate does respond to the question but with the wrong information, do not repeat the question as the candidate has already responded. Just move on as they won't receive credit. This is the teacher card version of the read aloud. The instructions are given in English at the top. The thematic context is printed for ease. The candidate text is reproduced for ease of reference. The following questions are printed. You can see the example of the like and the opinion questions here. Just to note, these must be unprepared by the candidate, so do not appear on the candidate card. It clearly instructs the teacher examiner that questions must not be rephrased and that the question may be repeated twice, so asked a total of 3 times if necessary. If a candidate answers incorrectly, do not repeat the question, just move on. Now moving to the musts and must-nots of the teacher examiner in the read aloud. Teacher examiners must allocate the read aloud card using the sequencing tool. Give the candidate 1 minute of additional prep time in the exam room, which may be used to practice reading out loud. Start the recording at the beginning of the additional 1 minute prep time. Indicate to the candidate when the 1 minute starts and ends. Say, the test will now begin. Please read the text at the end of the 1 minute of additional prep time. Take the read aloud card from the candidate as soon as they have finished reading, before the follow-on questions. Teacher examiners must not correct pronunciation during the prep time or during the test, or provide any support to the candidate at all during the exam, or interrupt the candidate other than to signal the end of the prep time and to start the assessment. At the time of saying the test will now begin is the time I would advise you to start using your stopwatches in order to monitor the maximum exam time of 9 or 12 minutes, depending which tier the candidate is sitting. A few more instructions. Teacher examiners must take away the read aloud stimulus card from candidates before starting asking the follow-on questions. Ask the set questions exactly as presented. Teacher examiners may repeat the set questions twice, i.e. 3 times in total, if the candidate asks for them to be repeated or doesn't respond. Teacher examiners must not rephrase the set questions, repeat the question if the candidate answers incorrectly, or ask any supplementary questions. Now time for a quick quiz. This is just a fun mini plenary to check your understanding of the read aloud task, so no pressure. You can note down your answers and compare to the answers I give you afterwards so you get some feedback to know you're on track. I recommend pausing after each question to give you time to write your answers. So here are the questions. Number 1. How many different read aloud cards will there be per tier? A, 6, B, 12, C, 16. Question 2. When should you start recording the speaking exam? Question 3. What must teacher examiners do once the candidate has finished reading the passage, but before asking the follow-on questions? Question 4. True or false? The follow-on questions test the candidate's understanding of the passage. Question 5. How many times in total can the teacher examiner ask each follow-on question? A, twice, B, 3 times, C, 4 times. And finally, question 6, true or false? Follow-on questions are marked for communication only, not linguistic knowledge and accuracy. I'll just go through the answers for you. So, question 1, the answer is A. There are 6 cards. Question 2, the recording starts before the candidate starts their additional 1-minute preparation in the exam room. Question 3, before the follow-on questions, you must take the stimulus card from the candidate. Question 4 is false. The follow-on questions are related to the content of the passage, but draw on the candidate's own experience. Question 5, the answer is B. You can repeat each follow-on question up to 3 times. And question 6 is true. The follow-on questions are marked for communication only. It's the same 2-1-0 marking grid applied to the read aloud and picture task follow-on questions and to the role play. Let's move on to the role play. Part 2 of the speaking exam is the role play. The focus of the role play task is to assess communication through understanding and responding, including the ability to ask questions, and through interacting in realistic transactional settings known in advance. It is marked for communication only, using the 2-1-0 grid we have just talked about for the unseen read aloud questions, meaning that responses need to have at least 2 words to achieve full 2 marks, but answers do not need to be developed. There are 10 transactional settings listed in the specification that will be the focus of the role plays. These include hotel, campsite, tourist information office, and they are all scenarios which you might find yourself in when travelling, but also may experience where you live. The transactional settings are all formal settings in nature, but there is no requirement by the candidate to use the formal register in their responses. The role plays will be allocated randomly using the sequencing tool. All rubrics on the role play card will be in English. The teacher cards contain the exact questions and instructions, including the introduction from the teacher, who always asks the first question. So let's have a look at a candidate role play card. You can clearly see the setting at the top. Here it is at the train station. All instructions and prompts are in English. It gives candidates a scenario. Here it says, you are at a train station in France. Your teacher will play the part of the employee at the train station and will speak first. Your teacher will ask you questions in French and you must answer in the target language. You are expected to say a few words or a short phrase or sentence in response to each prompt. 1-word answers will not be sufficient to achieve full marks. Then below is the task itself with 5 prompts for the candidate to prepare. We can tell this is a foundation tier card because there is only one question, which will always be prompt 5. At higher tier, there are 2 questions in the role play, always in prompt 5 and one other, but never the first prompt. There is no requirement from the prompts to know specific items of vocabulary, nor is there a requirement to use a verb, but fully communicated responses need more than one-word answers. An example of a fully communicated response to the first prompt here, say what ticket you want, could be Je voudrais 2 billets, or 2 s'il vous plaît, or des billets pour 2 personnes. All of those would achieve 2 full marks. This slide shows the teacher card. The instructions are really clear and are in English. The teacher script should be read exactly as it is printed. It states, begin the role play with the following introduction. You are at a train station in France. I will play the part of the employee at the train station and will speak first. Prompt 5 will always be a question, and at higher tier there will be another question in prompts 2, 3 or 4, but never prompt 1. Another reminder here is that you must not rephrase or change the prompts in any way. Read them exactly as they are on the card. Here are the musts and must nots of the teacher examiner role in the role play. Teacher examiners must allocate the role play stimulus card according to the sequencing tool. Introduce the scenario at the start of the role play. Read the prompts exactly as presented. Take the stimulus card from the candidate at the end of the task. Teacher examiners may repeat the prompt questions twice, in other words, repeat up to 3 times in total, if the candidate asks for them to be repeated or doesn't respond. Teacher examiners must not rephrase the set prompts and always read them in full. Repeat the prompt if the candidate answers incorrectly. Ask any supplementary questions. Now time for another quick quiz to check your understanding of the role play. I recommend pausing after each question to give you time to write your answers. Here are the questions. Question 1. How many different role play cards will there be per tier? A, 6, B, 10, C, 12. Question 2. How does the role play start? Question 3. What will prompt 5 require the candidate to do? Question 4. True or false? Questions and responses must all use the formal register. Question 5. How many times in total can the teacher examiner read each prompt? A, twice, B, 3 times, C, 4 times. And finally, question 6, true or false? If the candidate responds incorrectly to a prompt, you can ask it again. I'll just go through your answers. So number 1 is A. Pearson will set 6 different role plays per tier, taken from the 10 possible transactional settings listed in the specifications. Question 2. To start the role play, the teacher reads the scenario and always asks the first question. Question 3. For prompt 5, candidates have to ask a question. This will always be the case at both tiers, and at higher tier there will be a second question at prompt 2, 3 or 4, but never prompt 1. Number 4. False. The teacher questions use the formal register, but there is no requirement for candidates to respond using formal register. And number 5 is B. The teacher examiner can read each prompt up to 3 times if students need a repeat. Question 6. False. You cannot repeat a prompt if the candidate responds incorrectly, only if they've said nothing or if they ask you for a repeat. Let's move on to task 3, the picture task. This shows you the process for allocation of the picture task thematic context. You can see the first instruction is that prior to the speaking window, candidates select the thematic context for the picture task. This happens 2 working weeks prior to the speaking window, so does not include Easter holidays, and will be decided for your centre based on the published Pearson speaking window dates for the year of entry. Students will be randomly allocated 2 thematic contexts by the sequencing tool. They will select one. When you confirm their choice in the sequencing tool at the appropriate time in the process, it will then allocate each candidate a specific read aloud and role play. They can focus on preparing for the thematic context prior to their speaking exam, as I've explained about the speaking window, knowing that the pictures they are given on the day of their exam will be based on that thematic context, and knowing that the conversation after the picture task will also start on that thematic context. On the day of their exam, the student is given their allocated picture card in their preparation time. They choose one of the 2 pictures on the card to describe. We will look at an example of a picture card shortly. During the preparation time, candidates prepare sentences describing the people, location, and activity in the picture they have chosen. They may use these notes in the conversation part of the picture task. The pictures are the same for both tiers. During the speaking exam, the teacher examiner uses the teacher card and available prompts to elicit a description of the picture from the candidate. There are then 2 unseen compulsory questions about the selected picture. Then the teacher examiner asks a question on a compulsory starting subject, which leads into the natural conversation that follows. We will go through this in more detail in the next slides. Hopefully your questions will get answered in the next couple of slides, but there is also an FAQs document on our website which will answer a lot of questions should we not cover them during this training. Here you can see the purpose of each of the 3 elements in the picture task. There is the picture description, which is assessed for communication, clarity, and linguistic and grammatical accuracy. We are looking for accurate, extended descriptions of the picture. Afterwards, there are the compulsory follow-on questions, which are assessed for communication only. These relate to the student's own experience and are based on the picture. And then finally, there is the conversation, which is marked for response to questions and linguistic knowledge and accuracy. We will look at the conversation in more detail later, but the conversation is an opportunity for candidates to develop their responses as well as they are able, give and justify their own thoughts and opinions, refer to past, present and future events, produce extended sequences of speech, and to demonstrate the full range of their ability. For the picture task, Pearson will set 18 different cards for each tier, 3 for each thematic context. Cards will be randomly allocated by the sequencing tool and will be on the thematic context chosen by the candidate. All rubrics on cards will be in English. Teacher cards contain full instructions, including the compulsory questions to ask about their chosen picture and a compulsory starting topic for the conversation. Each card will have a different choice of pictures and starting topic from within the thematic context. Let's look at the assessment criteria for the picture description and compulsory questions elements. Examiners will be listening for the 3 bullet points being addressed: people, location, and activity. They will be listening for development of ideas about each bullet point, in other words, have candidates develop the information about each bullet point, and how clear and comprehensible what they have said is. In terms of linguistic knowledge and accuracy, they will be listening for variety of vocabulary and grammatical structures, as well as accurate use of language. The compulsory follow-on questions are marked using the 2-1-0 grid for communication only. These are the questions that require at least 2 words in the response. The sample assessment materials and exemplars on our website unpack this in a lot more detail, so I would advise you to take a look there if you haven't done so already. This is what the candidate card will look like. There are two colour pictures based on the thematic context chosen by the candidate. Candidates choose one picture to describe. There are clear instructions in English. They must cover the 3 bullet points: people, location, and activity. Marks will be based on how many of those bullet points have been covered and how well they have been developed. To access the top band of marks, higher candidates need to provide information about all 3 bullet points, and foundation tier candidates need to give information about 2 or more bullet points as per the mark scheme. Candidates can describe any other aspect of the picture once they have covered the bullet points. Description should be developed and detailed. So again, I would advise you to look at the sample assessment material and exemplar material on the website for further details of this. One analogy a teacher shared with us during training, which could help when you prepare students, is that they have to imagine they are describing the photo to somebody who can't see it and has to draw it as a picture. This will help them to add enough detail. This is what the teacher card looks like. The teacher card has both pictures on it. It contains the exact prompts that you are allowed to use to elicit information from the candidates if needed, which are prompts that ask in the target language. And the people? Where is that? What are they doing? Anything else? You must not change these prompts. The prompts can be used a maximum of 3 times. The teacher card also has the compulsory questions for each picture. These must not be rephrased or changed in any way. Do not repeat the question if a student responds incorrectly. We can see that this is a foundation card as the questions are both present tense. The second question on the foundation card will always be the first question on the higher card. The second higher question will always be a past tense. Here are the musts and must-nots of the teacher-examiner role in the picture description and the compulsory questions element. Teacher examiners must allocate the picture task stimulus card according to the sequencing tool. Ask the 2 compulsory questions as presented without rephrasing. Teacher examiners may use the set prompts as presented in the target language to encourage the candidate to say as much as possible about the picture. Repeat the set questions and prompts twice, i.e., you can repeat up to 3 times in total if the candidate asks for them to be repeated or doesn't respond. Teachers must not rephrase the compulsory questions, ask any supplementary questions, deviate from the set prompts. After the picture description and 2 follow-on questions, the exam then moves to the conversation. The recommended timings are shown here, but remember that these are recommendations only, and that the most important time to remember is the total exam time. Try to stick to the recommendations if you can to ensure that candidates have the optimum amount of time to show off their language. Conversations are not penalised for being too short, but they might be self-limiting. The aim is that the conversation flows freely and that it evolves naturally, dependent upon what the candidate says. This means that the conversation may naturally flow into another thematic context or multiple other thematic contexts over the course of the conversation. This is fine. The teacher examiner card has a compulsory starter topic from within the thematic context. Examiners must begin the conversation by asking a question on this subtopic. So let's say, as an example, the picture task thematic context was my neighbourhood. The compulsory starter topic might be the natural world, which is one of the subtopics within that thematic context. You will be given a suggested starter question on that subtopic, but you also may ask your own starter question, as long as it's about that subtopic, in this case, natural world. After the question on the mandatory subtopic, the conversation can flow naturally in any direction. Sustaining a natural conversation, or as natural as possible, is the most important thing, and we would rather questions cover a variety of thematic contexts than that the candidate struggles to produce any language stuck in one thematic context. A good example of this might be in a conversation based on studying my future, in which the teacher says, "What did you do last year at school?" The student may respond with, "Last year I went on a class trip to Paris." The teacher could then ask the student about Paris, such as, "What was Paris like? What did you eat there? What did you drink there?" which may then lead on to questions about travel and the country being discussed, etc. The point is that you respond to what the student says rather than worry about sticking to a topic after the opening question on the specific subject. This slide shows the format of the teacher card. The first bullet point shows you which starter subject to begin with. Remember that this is mandatory, but the suggested question is just a suggestion. The card states you must begin the follow-on conversation by asking the candidate to talk about things for young people to do, for example, and then you are provided with an example starter question. However, you may choose your own as long as it is on that same starter topic. The card states that you should use the candidate's response to continue the conversation about this subject, as well as other areas of the thematic context and the interests of the candidate. As this is the part of the exam that candidates can show off their language skills, your job here as teacher examiners is to ask questions which allow candidates to respond in past, present and future tenses. The mark scheme does focus on how well candidates have used the tenses, so it's important that they try in this section to use as much variety of language as possible. There are some suggested questions for teachers, but the suggested questions are just that, and teachers may use their own if they prefer. This is what examiners will be looking out for in the conversation. Examiners will be listening for how relevant the responses are to the questions you ask them, and how well they develop their ideas. In other words, the additional detail, reasoning, justification, and elaboration that they provide. They will also be listening for clear and comprehensible messages. In terms of linguistic knowledge and accuracy, they will be listening for variety of vocabulary and grammar, as well as successful use of time frames. Further detail of the assessment criteria can be found in the SAMs along with exemplar material. I strongly recommend that you look at the exemplar materials as they go into detail about the marking process and the marks given. Here are the musts and must nots of the teacher examiner role in the conversation element of the picture task. Teacher examiners should allow candidates to develop ideas, produce extended sequences of speech, use a range of timeframes, and use a variety of grammatical structures and vocabulary. Teacher examiners should not ask closed questions if possible, in other words, yes or no questions, as this limits the candidate's ability to develop their responses and might lead to lots of yes or no answers which don't show off language or get much credit. Teachers should also try not to talk too much, and teachers should not encourage candidates to memorize and reproduce answers. This is because the conversation should be as natural as possible. What we mean here is that candidates shouldn't pre-learn or pre-rehearse full responses to the exact set of questions that you are going to ask them. Obviously, through the teaching and learning process, your candidates will learn and memorize key language phrases and structures and so on, as that is part of language learning, but they should not be given the exact set of questions they will be asked on the day or told to pre-learn their responses. Now for a quick quiz about the picture task and conversation. I recommend pausing after each question to give you time to write your answers. Here are the questions. Question 1. How many different picture task cards will there be per tier? A, 6, B, 12, C, 18. Question 2. True or false? Candidates only have to describe one of the two pictures on the card. Question 3. What three elements must be covered in the picture description? Number 4. How can teacher examiners encourage candidates to extend or develop their description? Question 5. The conversation should start A. with a question from the thematic context, B. with a question about the picture, C. with a question from the mandatory starting topic. Question 6. True or false? Clearly memorized or pre-prepared responses to the conversation are not allowed. And here are the answers. Number 1 is C. There will be 18 picture task cards, 3 per thematic context. Number 2 is true. Candidates only describe one of the 2 pictures on the card. Number 3, people, location and activity are the 3 elements that students must cover in their description of the picture. Number 4, teachers can encourage candidates to extend or develop their description by using the set prompts on the teacher card, and only those prompts. Question 5 is C. The conversation should start with a question from the mandatory starting topic. And number 6, that's true. Clearly memorized or pre-prepared responses by students are not allowed. So, we have now covered all of the elements of the speaking exam. On the website, there is a useful FAQs document, which I'm just going to show you a snippet of now. The document is on our website for each language. If you select Course Materials, then Teaching and Learning Materials, it's in the drop-down menu under Teacher Support. And it gives a lot of detail about the speaking assessment. Here are some examples of questions and responses from the document. The timings are an element of the speaking exam that teachers ask us about a lot. Teacher examiners are responsible for timings, so please access the FAQs as well as refer to the published teacher crib sheet for more information. An example of some of the questions are: how strict are the timings for the speaking assessment as a whole? We know the answer to that after today. It's the maximum timing that is mandatory, so 7 to 9 and 10 to 12 minutes, as well as the preparation time. I would advise you to take a look at that document in preparation for doing these assessments. So, moving on to look at administration. The speaking assessment window is published on the qualifications website. See the link below for updates. Teacher examiners will be able to access the secure speaking materials 3 working days before the start of the assessment period. All speaking assessments must be recorded digitally and uploaded to Pearson via the Learner Work Transfer portal. Please also see our support guide in Forms and Administration on our website. Let's talk about all the support available to you from Pearson. This slide is about training. Please check the PD Academy for the most up-to-date information on training. The training currently available in the PD Academy is the following: how to conduct the speaking exam, live and pre-recorded sessions, unpacking the speaking exam, effective phonics teaching for the read aloud and dictation tasks, drop-in clinics, unpacking the writing exam. We also have a YouTube playlist of event recordings, including Spotlight on Writing, Paper 4. Training coming soon includes Mastering Dictation and Teachers' Self-Paced Training of Unpacking the Speaking and Unpacking the Writing courses with marking training. This slide shows you free resources that are available on our qualifications website, which include the speaking crib sheet, the speaking paper guide, the listening paper guide, also reading and writing, and further exemplar material. These include exemplars of speaking and writing tasks, which will show you examiner commentaries and give you insight into the marking process. There are vocabulary lists, banks of practice, read aloud and dictation tasks, and lots more resources. Subject advisor support. Our languages subject advisor is Rebecca Waker, who many of you will have had contact with already. You can contact her in a variety of ways that you can see on this slide: by email, by phone, by booking an appointment, and I also recommend signing up to receive regular updates from her on the latest qualification news and support. This slide is about Facebook. As well as our Pearson Edexcel Facebook page, where you can get updates, Rebecca has a very active and well-monitored Facebook group just for Edexcel language teachers, which is a very positive space to get the information you need or to be pointed in the right direction for support. As I mentioned before, our Professional Development Academy is where you will be able to search by your subject and find further training courses you can book and attend. Feedback. As this is a recorded version of this training, there is not a specific link to feedback for this session, but you are very welcome to pass on any feedback to us via the channels I mentioned before. We've come to the end of our training for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found it useful and informative.